Hello everybody, welcome to number 27, and this is an Alfa Romeo Giulietta. Now I am going to pronounce it the Italian way rather than the English because Giulietta just doesn't sound as good. It typifies Alfa Romeo's drift between genius and self-destruction. It's a car that shows some really clever thinking, but unfortunately at the same time it also heralded another era of decline for Alfa. So by the time that this car was launched in 1977, Alfa Romeo had been under continuous government ownership until from the 1930s. Now, they'd had to pump loads of money into the company. So for example, just recently with the Alfa Sud project, they'd had to build a factory down south. So the Italian government said to Alfa, okay, no more money for a while. And Alfa Romeo had to make a whole upper series of cars essentially just using one platform. So they had to be quite inventive. Now the thing is, they were so strapped for cash. Not only were they using one platform for the Alfetta, which this is derived from, but this had to use exactly the same wheelbase, but obviously it was supposed to be a class below. So what could they do? Well, they had to reduce the overhangs, particularly at the rear. And again, the way they did it is ingenious, but it's also responsible for the rather controversial looks that the Giulietta has. So you can see here that it's kind of wedge-shaped, which is okay, but the back of the car is really quite high. The rear seats are higher than the fronts. It sort of comes back and then it has this sort of lip spoiler. And the Italian press dubbed it the ducktail, but unlike in Porsche circles, that was not meant to be a complimentary thing. To make the car smaller, they literally had to push the back inwards. And as a result of that, some of the technical stuff changed. So the fuel tank, rather than being flat on the floor, is now up, just up here, next to the seats, all the way to the top of the seats there, which is why everything was raised. You can see also the spare wheel is upright rather than down on the floor, all because of that packaging issue. So the nearest competitor really for the Giulietta would have been the E21 3 Series BMW, which I think, was it the first 3 Series? No, I think it was the second 3 Series. Anyway, that was the competitor for this car, and objectively, really, it is better in almost every way. So they looked more conventionally pretty. They were much better made, much more solid, and the engine, the 2-litre competitor for this, was actually a 6-cylinder rather than a 4. But Alfas of this era were really well known for their handling. So let's take it out and see if the Giulietta can redeem itself. Now, one of the joys of driving a late 70s or early 80s Alfa is that they came with this sort of like control unit, Alfa sort of alarm system thing that would tell you what was going on with the car. It was actually, firstly, the Alfa made a big deal about it. It comes with a computer that monitors everything that's going on. What tends to happen, as it did there, is you switch it on and about 4 different lights come on telling you there's a problem with it. Thankfully, on this car, they do tend to disappear as soon as you move off. Every time I've done it, after, you know, like 10-20 seconds, it all clears. So now there's no idiot lights showing. Now this is an absolutely lovely car belonging to Alex. Thank you so much for bringing it down, Alex. 52,000 miles, and I can well believe that looking at the general condition, which is absolutely fantastic. Now these Giuliettas, like the Alfettas, had quite a few quirks if you're looking at the interior. One of the endearing ones is that the dials, the tachometer and the speedo, go towards each other, which is quite nice. I don't know if it's a nod perhaps to Giulietta. In Italian it's Romeo e Giulietta, and if it's a nod to the Shakespeare thing that they're going towards each other, probably not, but it's unusual, it's quirky, it's very nice. There's something else which is quirky and utterly mental about these, and that is that you want to roll the window up and down. Where is it? Here? Somewhere where you'd expect? Up there? No. Where are the window switches? They're on, they're on the roof. I mean, seriously, only the Italians. It's just absolutely bonkers. Once you know where they are, it's not too bad, although it's still better, to be honest, down below. But anyway, weird stuff. There's the control system I mentioned. The plastics are really quite low rent. I love the instrument pod, but these vents, particularly at the top, it looks like Kinder Egg plastic. It really wasn't quite up to scratch. Heating system, thankfully, doesn't have any weird quirks. It's the 3 sort of sliders, and then you have your vents here, so that's all okay. I love this cloth interior. It's so late 70s, early 80s, and these seats are so comfortable. They have a bit of squidge in them. Modern manufacturers learn. Why can't seats be a bit softer? Now this one is the 2-litre of the venerable Alfa twin cam, so 128 horsepower, and now we're going to find out how it goes down the road. I believe this car to be completely standard exhaust wise as well. So it's redlined at about 6.3, but you don't really want to rev it all the way up there. It's pretty smooth, but just doesn't feel quite as eager as some of the other twin cams I've driven. This has twin Solexes, it doesn't have Webers, so maybe with a couple of side draft Webers it would pep it up a little bit, or maybe they just need a tune. It still feels alright, but it's not quite as eager as I thought it would be. Now on these faster big sweepers, the steering is simply magical. It's lovely. It's just off center. It's got such fluidity to it. It's so oily, it's silky, it's smooth. Loads of feel coming through, and it's absolutely lovely. On the tighter sections of the corner, it feels a little bit more reluctant. It starts to lean quite a bit, and it's not quite there. I think you have to go in maybe with a harder throttle and keep it a little bit more neutral through the corner. Now it is absolutely incredible how well this car rides. It's astonishing. Modern manufacturers take note. This thing is going down the road, it feels like a French car. Okay, it's a little bit soft in the corners, but wow, that ride is incredibly impressive. Now these were transaxle cars, which means that the gearbox is at the back. That has the advantage that you get a really well balanced car, and we'll find out more when we get to the little S's, but it does mean that the gearbox takes a bit of getting used to. Not only isn't it's not natural in terms of the placement of the gears, but it's very long. So I think it's a cable actuated system. It's something that many people have complained about over the ages. Once you know though, it just adds to the character. All Alphas of this era, the transaxles, they all feel the same. You know, the gear change is just the way it is. It's not fast, it's not snickety-snick. It's closer to a van, quite frankly. But it kind of just adds to the whole thing. The brake pedal has a lot of travel, and the brakes feel a little bit weak. Alex, the owner, noticed it as well, but the chap who's looking after it for him, who knows these inside out, basically told him that's just the way they are. The brakes weren't the best sort of point in these. Anyway, let's see how it is down here. Third, but I think second for the hairpin. A lot of lean. So it's not natural in some ways, because you go in a tight corner like that and it really, the front end just sort of plows down. But if you then sort of keep your foot pinned to the floor, that's when you get a really nice transition and it feels quite neutral. Let's just take it through the gears again and get some of that Alfa goodness. Amazing turning circle as well, which is no bad thing. And let's go. Okay, I revved it all the way to 6.2 there, 6.4. But in the upper gears, you want to change at 6 maximum. So you kind of want to settle it in the corner, and then the initial thing is understeer. If you keep the throttle pinned, and then it kind of evens out a bit. That's absolutely lovely through there. So even though it's rear-wheel drive, it doesn't have a huge abundance of power, so you never feel like the back end might just completely wash away from you. And there, just a tiny bit of a progressive two-wheel drift, so that was lovely. Now the looks are definitely controversial. I can't say that from the back in particular or rear three-quarters this is a pretty car, but it certainly is distinctive, and if you consider the challenges that they were facing with lack of funds, the fact that they still managed to get like an upper range of cars of this, the Alfetta, the Coupe, is still quite admirable. The thing is though that most people weren't quite conned, and I think that they knew that although this was supposed to be a class below the Alfetta, it actually was essentially the same car. Okay, it's got smaller boots, slightly smaller interior, but chassis is pretty much identical, and as a result it started to cannibalize the sales of the Alfetta, which wasn't really ideal. It was replaced by the 75, which again mechanically had a few little changes here and there, but it was more or less the same car. Now driving position, you've got the pedals more or less right in front of you, which is nice, but then the wheel is about 2 inches too far to the left. It's really odd, it's pointing here almost, and also it's too far in and tilted forward. Italy, Italians, what were you doing at this era? I don't know. I don't even think a short Italian would find this comfortable. The reach to the wheel is just too long, and in this car, you know, unassisted steering, you need to muscle it a little bit, so you want to have the wheel upright where you can get some grip on it and some strength on it. The way it is really isn't right. So it's at its best on these lovely sort of gentle quick sweepers where you're just tweaking the wheel a few centimeters, few millimeters even actually each way. Responds beautifully, flows down the road, the ride is brilliant. On the tighter stuff, I don't think it really works quite as well, but on these corners it's beautiful, it really is. Look, it has a lot of flaws, and I think it's undeniable. If you look at sales of this, and if you see what happened to BMW, what happened to Alfa, you know that the cars that Alfa were producing in this era just weren't quite up to scratch, and this has a lot of defects, of things that go against it, but at the same time, it's just a car which is immensely lovable, and there's so few of them about because everybody loves the German cars. Nothing love these, so there's hardly any of them about now. It is just so nice to see, so nice to drive. Now this seems to me to be a really, really clean, lovely car. It's very low mileage. Alex is sort of thinking about selling it. If you're interested, I'll put his email address in the video description. I think the last one, which was on a TV show of some description, sold at auction for 12, and it wasn't as good as this car, but I know Alex is sort of, he's not going to give it away, but he's flexible. If you're interested, genuinely interested, get in touch with him. Thank you all so much for having watched this video. If you want me to do something on one of your cars, if you want to do a video on one of your cars, please get in touch. And do have a look at this video, which is about the first and last Busso. So a GTV, same chassis as this, but the coupe version of the Alfetta, up against, so that was 70 something, up against the last GTV from the 1990s and the last version of the Busso. Thank you so much, and see you soon.